Hello everyone! The tragic death of Johnny Carson, one of the most beloved and iconic television hosts in American history, remains a heartbreaking reminder of how even the brightest stars are not immune to the frailties of life. And when news broke in January of 2005 that the legendary King of Late Night had passed away at the age of 79, millions of fans around the world felt as though a piece of television history had been lost forever. Because Carson was not just a host, he was a cultural phenomenon, a man who had revolutionized the late-night talk show format with The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, a program that ran for 3 decades from 1962 to 1992 and became the standard by which all late-night shows would be judged. And his passing wasn't just the loss of a man, but the closing of an era. And the story of his final years and tragic death is layered with both triumphs and struggles that make it even more poignant, as Carson's journey to the top was marked by immense success. But his later years were filled with reclusion, health battles, and a sense of withdrawal from the public eye, almost as if he knew his time was limited and wanted to retreat from the spotlight he had once commanded with ease. Because after retiring from television, Carson became an intensely private man, rarely making appearances, rarely giving interviews, and choosing instead to spend his time sailing, reading, and enjoying the quiet life in Malibu. But behind this quiet retreat was a man whose health was deteriorating due to years of smoking, as Carson was a lifelong heavy smoker, often seen with a cigarette even during the early days of his show. And while smoking was glamorized in his era, the consequences would eventually catch up with him, leading to emphysema and severe respiratory problems, and ultimately his death from respiratory failure brought on by complications of emphysema was a cruel but inevitable outcome of his decades-long addiction, which made his passing even sadder for fans who had watched him joke about life, longevity, and happiness on television, never realizing that his habits were slowly taking him away from them. And when the news of his death hit the airwaves, it wasn't just celebrities and politicians who paid tribute, but ordinary Americans, people who had grown up with him in their living rooms every night, people who had laughed with him during their darkest days, people who considered Johnny Carson a part of their families. And the outpouring of grief was overwhelming because Carson wasn't just a comedian or a host. He was a trusted companion for millions, someone who made the world feel lighter at the end of a long day. But behind the laughter, Carson's life had always carried a sense of tragedy and complexity, with 3 failed marriages, strained relationships with some of his children, and an ongoing battle with loneliness, despite being surrounded by fame and fortune, making his story one that mixes brilliance with heartbreak. And in the aftermath of his death, countless retrospectives highlighted not just his impact on television, but also the way he had set the gold standard for wit, charm, and timing, yet quietly battled his demons away from the spotlight. And what remains so haunting is that even in his final years, Carson had hinted at his mortality, writing jokes about death, and talking candidly with close friends about not fearing the end. But when it finally came, the shock and sadness was still unbearable for those who had adored him. And today, the tragic death of Johnny Carson serves as both a cautionary tale about the dangers of smoking and a somber reflection on how even legends, who seem larger than life, are ultimately human, vulnerable, and destined to fade. But the beauty of Carson's legacy is that while his life ended in sadness, his laughter, his interviews, his sketches, and his ability to bring joy live on forever, etched into the memories of those who experienced his magic. And though his death left a void, his influence on comedy and television will never die, ensuring that Johnny Carson, even in tragedy, remains eternal in the hearts of millions who will never forget the King of Late Night. Thanks for watching.